I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the roll call for this evening, all board members are present. Tonight we have a substitution at the student rep. Nana Sambrew is here for Abby, and so we welcome her. Open forum. For open forum tonight, in accordance to policy 203, there's a 15-minute time period that's set aside to receive citizen input, and through this open forum segment of the board. And anyone wishing to have their statement read needs to submit it by noon of the meeting date to Martha Walls. And public comment for these, like I said, may be submitted to Martha Walls. To avoid any kind of confusion, please make sure that you note that this comment is intended for open forum. We do have one letter to read. Was submitted quite a while ago, but we are going to read it. This is Prior Lake School Board. Who is listening to the cries of the children in our community? The school closure is causing trauma across our city and nation. Who hears these children crying out for their teachers, friends, and social interaction? Children are committing suicide, regressing in school at record numbers, and the risk of their spreading the virus is next to zero. Dr. Fauci was quoted as saying, "Close the bars and open the schools." Our children deserve to go back to school now. Private schools are functioning exceptionally well with very low cases of COVID. Most cases are linked to outside school. Here's an article from NBC that I suggest you all read, and then you tell all of us parents and grandparents these schools should remain closed. We will all come to you for answers and solutions for our children and grandchildren's mental and educational health. My grandson is a first grader at Jeffers Pond, and I can tell you he is not the same kid without school. All of you school board members have a responsibility to do the best for our children that you can, and having the schools closed, you are failing miserably. Deanne Westrom, 21560 Bitterbush Pass, Prior Lake, Minnesota. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as listed?
So made.
By Jonathan, second.
Second.
By Michael. Any comments, discussion? Jonathan. Roll call.
Aye.
Enrique.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Mary.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. The consent agenda items are listed. They're considered routine in nature and will be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion on these items unless it's requested by a board member or citizen. On tonight's consent agenda is the check wire transfer disbursement summary, the wire transfer EFT and ACH banking activity, the bank reconciliation statement from November 2020, the building bond investment reports, the monthly wire detail, the monthly health dental wire detail, the monthly check detail, the monthly ACH detail, approval of the school board minutes from the board study session December 14th, also the board regular meeting December 14th, candidates for employment, resignation, terminations, non-renewals as listed, and leaves of absence. Is that correct, Jim? I just want to make sure I'm getting them all in there. Do I have a motion? Oh, wait, sorry. How far does it go down? Do I have a motion to accept those items listed as in the consent agenda?
So made.
Who's that by? Julie? Oh, Mary? Sorry. Second?
Second.
By Enrique. Any comments? Okay. Amy?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Jonathan? Enrique?
Aye.
That passes 7-0. Next up is the resolution for acceptance of gifts. There's none at this time, so on to Laker Pride.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. For the last 6 years, we have been working and planning some more and implementing plans around educational space across the district. And tonight, as we turn the corner on the new year, we are going to celebrate a huge part of the success of the construction and the projects that have impacted every single site in our district, as well as building additional learning spaces. Once the voter approval of our 2017 referendum happened, we had a whole lot of people that went to work on design teams and planning teams, looking at finances, looking at every single part of this. But tonight we want to recognize and celebrate one of our departments, our Department of Operations, Transportation, and Health and Safety, who really have done some amazing heavy lifting during the construction project. And I think that as we look at what they have done to ensure the health and safety of all of us over the last year of this pandemic, and doing both of those things at once, has truly been some heroic efforts that we are so proud of. So tonight we want to thank that staff. We've asked Director Jim Delbo and Assistant Director Maureen Mullen on behalf of their staff to also be recognized for your amazing leadership. The hours that you've put in, from the beginning of all of this, and especially in the last year. I've told Maureen and Jim several times, it doesn't matter how early I came to work or how late I stayed. One of them has been here, and usually both of them the entire time. They've set a standard of what it means to have dedicated service, customer service, and a work ethic to their staff and to those who are working with them and trying to keep up with them. So tonight we celebrate, as part of Laker Pride, the two of them, their entire team, for both the huge construction work that's happened over the last 5.5, 6 years, as well as the impact that they have had on really helping us get our kids back to activities and back to schools. So with that, I would invite Maureen and Jim to come up. I'd like to, again, thank you as leaders of a very important department in our organization, and thank you for everything that you've done. And I know you've got some, just a bit of some updates that you want to share with us.
Sure.
So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Ruel, School Board, Dr. Stowell, thank you for your introduction. Tonight we want to do a quick PowerPoint on construction and some of the other challenges we had during construction. Construction did start back in 2017. The community was kind enough to approve a referendum. The board was kind enough to support that as well. And there was a lot of work that was added to the whole district at that point. As Dr. Stalo said, a lot of design, a lot of concept work, and a lot of legwork to make that vision become a reality.
Excuse me, Martha, are you advancing the slides for this, or? No, we are doing, okay, great.
So-
We'll switch sides here?
Sure.
Or do it there. One?
Other one?
Nope. Tech support. Oh, thank you.
So you can just.
Okay. So the overview of this PowerPoint will be some of the scope, our partners, some of the challenges we've had, operations roles, the opportunities, and the impact on our education.
So part of that scope is the projects that have been completed since 2018. You can see the numbers that are on the slide. It's pretty amazing to look at that. I'm just going to get myself lined up here. So we have a total of 336,000 square feet of added space. That's brand new space to our district. So then now we have those two new buildings, which were a total of 112,000 plus square feet. In addition to that, 7 other sites, we had over 224,000 square feet of work done. And if you put that in context, if you think about the high school as a whole building with the additions, and every single room in that building was touched. That's what we did over the last 3 years. That's how many square feet we impacted in a combination of remodel, mechanical projects, and new additions in our district. We also, as part of this, purchased the Hamilton Ridge site, 14 acres, 12 of that is part of our new elementary school there. So another wonderful addition. So over 323 square feet, acres of our district now.
Right, yep. So we also couldn't have done this without partners. Again, we highlighted community. Community supported the referendum for our needs in space and improvements at our school buildings. Our design work, design is 3 different phases of design. We had a community design group, and then we had a staff design group, then we went into engineering design. And throughout all of that, Jeff Holmberg and Joan Heisey did a lot of coordinating. I think there was over 300 meetings for different groups just in design. So a really big task. And then it was our program and construction management team. A lot of engineering again, and a lot of boots on the ground to make sure that as we're doing projects, that the vision of design and that the product that we expect, we got. And then operations, obviously, we were a big part of that.
Some of the challenges that we experienced as part of these projects were in that we were dealing with occupied buildings, so occupied and school going on. So traffic, parking, staging, not just construction traffic, but all of our students and staff getting in and out of the building. So safety concerns, timing, deliveries, and also just the limitations of the site. If you remember the high school parking lot projects, those were pretty inconvenient. So there were some big challenges. Another one was building security. So with occupied buildings, not only are we concerned about keeping the buildings safe, but keeping our staff and students safe. So with opening up our buildings to outside people coming into them, we had all of our contractors check their IDs against the Raptor system, which we do for every visitor. We also had very strict protocols about who got keys, how we locked up, checking for access, making sure our buildings were secured every day. Another security issue was COVID. As that kind of came into the forefront this year, it was making sure that our contractors were following COVID protocols to keep both our staff that were still in the building safe and to keep our custodian and maintenance staff as safe as possible during that process. Another challenge was the noise of construction and the dirt. Not only cleaning up after it, but dealing with that noise during those 2 years before COVID, when the staff and students and administration in all the buildings put up patiently and endlessly with a lot of noise, a lot of inconvenience, a lot of dirt and dust. They were amazing to deal with, and just kudos to them for their patience through that process. Also the dirt and dust control ongoing for 3 years. I mean, custodian nightmare, they were amazing and continue to be. Many kudos to the custodians team for the ongoing work that they did throughout this whole process the last 3 years. There were also utility interruptions. We had coordinated heavily with IT department on that. They were amazingly responsive and helpful, keeping us all online. We had some very serious utility interruptions, and it was just handled so well by both departments.
And if I could add, some of those were unplanned.
Yes, yes, they were. And another piece of construction work with schools is always what they call the summer slam. It's putting 6 months worth of work into 2.5 months worth of schedule. It's an intense schedule. It was both the building staff and our custodial staff accommodating schedules of contractors coming early, staying late, weekends, holidays. It was a lot of accommodation by everybody in the district to make sure that we could get this slammed through.
And so we had site-specific issues too. A lot of different examples. That soils are a big one always. High school, if we go back to the parking lot, we had some really, high school's built on not a very good site. So we had to make some mitigation there. We had to extend contractors' hours. They don't share the same holidays we do, and when they play catch-up, we play catch-up. And again, as Maureen said earlier, we make sure our buildings are secured at the end of each and every day. Building leads were essential, custodians and maintenance contributions. They know a lot about their buildings and they care about the product that they're going to get. And really a remarkable sense of responsibility that they share in our buildings.
Some of the specific information for our building leads and maintenance is that with our mechanical projects, which is a big part of this project, is that we have to tie into existing systems, and the work that our maintenance and custodial staff do, as well as our engineers, in making sure that we can seamlessly do that while we have occupied buildings, is just really speaks to the knowledge that our staff have of their buildings and the mechanical work that they do to interface with those contractors. It's very important to make sure those are interfaced well, and they did a great job with that.
Yeah, they really did. It all looks great on paper, but they have insight. And again, we closely coordinate with contractors, provided invaluable information. When our team was flexible, they have ownership in the projects, they went above and beyond. Next phase of construction is plan, inspect, review. So again, we have a really short window of construction. As soon as the bond is passed, everybody wants to see shovels going. And there's a lot of work that goes in between that, not just concept design, but engineering design. And so our staff has a really big institutional knowledge of what will work, what won't work. And so we help review plans and specs. I'll give you a good example. The high school print set was 500 pages. That's a lot of information to go through. And so again, we focus on long-term implications of decisions. It's easy to make something go away quickly now, but if it's an issue down the road, we want to make sure that we're doing what's right. Again, the maintenance staff's input on that is invaluable. Again, we talked about existing conditions. There's a lot of issues that need to be solved. We don't know exactly what's behind every single wall, but we do know what it is once we find it and what it affects once it goes away and how to help make that solution work. Budget constraints are another one. Sometimes it's easier to do an inexpensive fix, but we really wanted to have real value in what we were doing. For a couple of reasons. Again, goes back to long-term solutions. And it's, Jeff, what is it you always say? Sometimes it's, what's your line?
Which one? I have no idea.
It only costs a few bucks more to do it right, something like that. And again, so we do have budget constraints, so we value our value engineering input to make sure that we honor the design of the product.
Another challenge that we faced was that we had to renumber every building that was touched in this project. So the high school is every single room in that building has a new number, the whole building a numbering system. So it's not just the room number, how do I get from, Tower A, room 303, it's how that affects our security system, how it affects our telephone system, how it affects every single addressable fire alarm in the building. So there's layers of mechanical systems on top of that simple numbering of a building. It was a really big project, and it was every single building that we did, as well as the physical signs of the many layers. I'm going to just add one more layer to that.
Sure.
Is that part of that project was also doing the remapping our buildings and doing all of our new fire shelter and exiting routes and maps and getting those printed and distributed district-wide. They were constantly changing throughout the projects. We had to keep them updated. That was part of our requirement with the fire marshal. And Christy went through many iterations of maps as we went through this project and getting them out to buildings as we had to keep them updated.
One of the other challenges we had through this was we had boundary change. When you add an elementary school, that means there's a change, and that's good news. A lot of work to get through that, but great committee work and board to help with establishing boundaries. Great relationship with our bus contractors and Jody and Lynn with campus to help us develop an efficient plan that most people like. Not all, most. We also had to coordinate moving all the pieces around, all the staff that move. I think a lot. I don't know what the amount was, but all the elementaries, we moved them, a lot of coordination,
It was thousands of boxes, thousands and thousands of boxes.
and I don't think we lost much. I think we heard about that. Couldn't have been too important, they didn't need it. And that was coordinated with outside maintenance, and, you know, it was a big summertime project before.
Yep, and it was done by in-house, which means we didn't have an expense of a moving company moving our district. It was a pretty massive undertaking for our teams to do. COVID-19, again, showed up last year and added another layer on top of our challenges. And with that was establishing PPE and distancing protocols for our contractors, which we mentioned before, monitoring the interactions with our custodial maintenance staff, and then developing and implementing our enhanced cleaning protocols. So there's another layer either over or under the construction that going on.
We also would support child nutrition, who had a big program too during COVID. A lot of food going out. We helped coordinate with that. We helped with deliveries, and helped with the bus company. Helped, you know, in the first round or last year, would actually deliver meals out to the community. It was a great program, and we were proud to be part of that. Outside maintenance, again, had a lot of extra deliveries, and we also had to source some equipment for, as the temperatures got warmer in April and March, they needed more cooler space because they were producing food in 3 sites. And so Marine located, and we got a couple of spot coolers or big coolers to help with food service. So again, the big part of our role is to make sure that the community's investment and interest in this project is what we could all be proud of, and I think we can be proud of that. I think we got great value out of the work from the community. I mean, the bond, and the bond was 109 million, but that's only one funding source. We had several funding sources to work through, and construction was actually about 130 million. When we take into account LTFM, we had grants, we had capital, child nutrition, and utility rebates.
Part of our job in operations is site supervision. Some of the things we have to do is make those decisions. When you open up that wall and you see that what's inside that wall doesn't match what's on the print, we have to decide how we're going to go forward, taking into account safety, taking into account long-term implications, taking into account cost, taking into account schedule, and being able to produce them and source the materials that we need for that fix. So it's being on site every day is really important for through this process for one or both of us, and that's every day that there's contractors here, and that was many weekends, many holidays, many hours a day. Another piece of being on site every day is that we are able to if there is something that happens, we have staff here to deal with it. For example, we had a flood event at the high school over the Christmas holiday on the 26th. And it happened on Saturday, and I'm very proud to say about the operations staff that because of the work that they so quickly did, we could have held school on Monday if we'd had to. We could have walked through there and not known there had been a flood in there. It was over 160,000, 16,000 gallons of water from a joint that came apart in the part of the new construction area. And the guys showed up, the team showed up and got to work. It was very impressive. So the value of people on site, the value of people knowing those buildings, and being so dedicated and willing to show up at those times is really important.
So we are currently in the commissioning and verification phase at the high school and other sites. It kind of lags behind the construction, but it's our job also to make sure that the systems work as designed. And it's really important, and it's a lot of painstaking work. And I'm not an engineer, but the telephone tells me when something's really wrong.
So our leads, our custodial leads and our maintenance team are so critical in this piece. They're the ones who say, you know what, that pump in that boiler room just doesn't sound right and it's only a month old. Or, you know, I was up on the roof in that RTU and something is just wrong with this compressor. You know, they're the ones who are out there every day with their hands on it, you know, giving us that information to say, hey, let's make sure this is operating right and that we're getting the value that we paid for. Another thing that we do is punch lists. So we got occupancy of our last edition on December 18th, and now we've got another year of punch lists at least. And this is a time when, you know, the engineers go through, the architects go through, they do their punch lists, and then we go through and we do our punch lists. And that is in combination with our custodians and with the principals in the building. What have you seen? What did they miss? What's not right? What isn't working? And then we take that list to them and we say, you know, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be made right, this needs to be done over, this needs to be replaced. And we've got some battles coming up.
Yep.
But it's really important, and we take a lot of pride in making sure that we're getting what we paid for.
Some of the opportunities that we have now is energy savings. So as we add equipment and add square footage, our energy use per square foot is actually going down. The equipment that we're using is spec for long-term energy savings. We utilize rebates for efficient equipment, not just in construction, but anytime we make any change. If we can get a rebate, we do. And energy use while under construction, again, it showed up in our last report. If you didn't know we were under construction, the trend is still really favorable. And construction is really intensive, energy intensive work.
Yeah, typically you would see a spike during construction. We saw a drop, which was, you know. Another opportunity we had was to coordinate projects that the district had. So for example, one of the projects was pulling some lockers out of the high school. We reinstalled them at Greenwood. That was an in-house project. That was our maintenance team installing those lockers. A great project. I think they look wonderful there. But an example of an in-house project that we could do in conjunction.
If I could add one thing, those lockers were destined for the scrap heap, and so we repurposed them. They fit beautifully in the space at Greenwood, and it really was a nice project.
Yeah. Another was landscaping. So the parking lot at Twin Oaks with the beautiful landscaping, that was done by our team. The design was from the landscape architect and the engineer, but it was our team that installed it. So great quality work and money savings for the district. Another project was we had our team redo the restroom partitions and some of the fixtures at the restrooms in both Greenwood and Twin Oaks lower level. Again, it wasn't part of the bond project, but we did it in conjunction with that project in-house, quality work at a really, really good price.
Another opportunity is salvage and recycling. We have saved thousands of dollars salvaging parts and equipment off of what's coming out in a mechanical project. We take everything we can off of it. So now when we need a part for a like piece of equipment, we're saving lots of money in that. Also recovered thousands and thousands of dollars on scrap metals, copper, brass, steel. And again, that's inside and outside maintenance. Really, they're scrap hounds, and they do a really good job.
Yep. They do. So construction cleaning was another opportunity. So we have really short timelines to turn over spaces from once we get occupancy to when we want to use them. And the building staff and these building administration have been really understanding and patient as some of those timelines have flexed. Some buildings more than others, but the staff that we have worked with, the administrative staff, have been really wonderful during this whole process. Construction cleaning is not regular cleaning. It's not just mopping and dusting. It's really deep cleaning. There's a lot of filth, a lot of layers. It's up high, it's down low, it's every crack and crevice, and you have to do it several times to get it done. It's expensive to hire, and we have done it both at Hamilton Ridge and at the high school, specifically for our bigger projects, having our in-house custodial teams come from other sites to clean in-house at a big dollar savings. I think $13,000 to $15,000 was the high school savings number, as well as getting a much better product than if we hire it out. So really great job for our custodial team. That kudos to them for doing those jobs so well.
And so now we're on impact. So we added a lot of extra space for education, additional spaces for athletics, youth sports. We're starting to get youth sports and athletics back in our buildings. Community ed, it's been moved over to Greenwood. It's in a great space, and community user groups. We have a few slides to share with photos.
So this is the Commons addition to the high school, so it butts up to, this is the last area that was just turned over on the 18th, this and the tower behind it. Twin Oaks, a couple of spaces, the resource areas at Twin Oaks, just really beautiful light-filled spaces.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see when they're really used with all the kids in there. Marie?
This is a very fun project. This is the back of Edgewood, and if you look at the wall on the right-hand side, we had to put up a retaining wall in this area, and we collaborated with the early childhood team there to develop a wall that was not just a block wall with a fence on top of it, but to do the grading and to make undulations in the wall so that we could make little cubby spaces at their requests and suggestions, so that we could create both push the wall back farther so there's more green space that's accessible, and also to make it more interesting and fun spaces for the kids, for a natural play space out there.
And outdoor classroom.
Outdoor classroom, yeah.
Yep. And then bridges, we all know the impact of that space on education. So are there any questions?
Questions? Oh, Michael.
I was just going to make a comment. You went so quickly from Laker Pride to presenting to us that we didn't get to say thank you or applaud you. And I will just say, it's from being involved in the referendum years ago to seeing it approved to being here tonight is a really powerful experience. I've also noticed your hours, and I'm sure Dr. Stahl has seen it more often. But your attitude and your work ethic and your professionalism and your pride in the buildings has definitely carried down throughout your staff, and you can't walk a single building here without seeing that and seeing that dedication. And then to add COVID to the top of it and know that the staff is here every day showing up, doing everything extra on top of it to keep our students and staff safe. So I just want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to thank you. You went so quick to serve us that we didn't get to do that.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Yes, I'd just like to say that for Jim and Maureen, I truly appreciate, first of all, the attention to detail. Every question I've ever had, any concern, every update has been answered bluntly, directly, very, very forthright, and I know that many times, particularly Jim, I have asked you how your staff is doing, because the added workload in addition to weather and then COVID and everything like that has been incredibly taxing. And it's been just a real pleasure to have worked with both of you through this whole project.
Any other comments? Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
I would just like to make a motion that we stand up and
Yes.
give these people a
Yay!
round of applause, because they're very good.
All right.
Thank you.
I was going to just say one little thing, just, I just want to let, the group I work for was one of the first user groups to go in this last weekend. And, as it has been for many years that we've rented space, always, your staff is top notch. We had a few volunteers, and people were really excited to see the activity center, and parents were out there with cameras taking pictures, and so I think there's, going to be a lot of community use. I think people have much pride in what you all have done, and I just want to thank you, I think, from the community as a whole, to really be delivering on this project that we know we plan for got funded and stayed the course and got it done on time and on budget. So, thank you. Okay. Next up, there's no, oh, personnel items, sorry, almost missed you there, Jim.
Board Chair, board members, Superintendent Stallo, tonight we have 2 personnel items to bring before the board for you to consider. The first is, well, first off, as is our protocol for new board members, anytime we're interested in adding new positions to the district, we bring them before the board. So this isn't rehires, this would be an additional authorization. And this is one of them for support staff. The request is for an additional speech assistant coach, and this is requested because of distance learning and the additional categories which students can now compete in speech. Russ is thinking it might be a 1-year thing if we're not in distance learning next year. However, just so that you know, this is booster funded, a booster funded position. So we would recommend the approval of a speech assistant coach.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the speech assistant coach?
So made.
By Mary, second?
Second.
By Amy? Any questions? Okay. See, oh, Mary? Did someone have a question?
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yes, I did.
Okay.
So the first question that I have, Jim, is obviously just clarifying for everyone listening, this is booster funded, it's not coming out of our budget.
Correct.
The other thing is you mentioned for the year, the actual speech term for the competition season and the training season isn't for a full year. So do you mean just through June 30th or?
For the competition season this year while we're in distance learning.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing is since this is an assistant coach, is this open to teachers as well as community members, et cetera? How would this be posted?
Yeah, it would be available to whoever would be.
Anybody who, okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Okay, so seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Julie?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Enrique?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0.
All right, the second personnel item is related to an MOU with Prior Lake Savage Education Association. The MOU is a change in language related to ECFE teachers that is a result of a grievance that was brought forward. It's a while in coming. The pandemic sort of got in our way, and we had a verbal agreement some time ago, but I put 2 documents in there for you to reference and sent you a message with some context around it. Only one really requires board action, but I thought the other one was important to put in there to provide what specifically that means. The MOU language is the one that we would bring forward for approval, but the settlement agreement is in there as well. And I think this is crucial. It not only references the MOU, but it also lays out what our intent is in detail. And the goal of both the union and us is to ensure that we understand this completely and we aren't back here again at some point, and I think it does that. So we bring the MOU forward for your consideration of approval.
Okay. We have the MOU as listed in your board packet. Do I have a motion for approval?
So made.
By Jonathan, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Any comments or questions? Anyone? Mary? Sorry, I can't see.
Again, first of all, thank you to Sean and to Jim and everyone else who worked on this. This is a painful process. Should not have had to go with a threat to arbitration. But hopefully we are moving beyond that. Relationships are hopefully healed. And I think we all should learn a lot from how to handle these things a little bit better in the future.
I think we're in a good spot.
Good. Comments, Jonathan?
Yeah, and I would echo a thank you to Jim and your team, and also to the bargaining unit leadership, having been there for the presentations and hearing everything. I think it was handled respectfully from all sides. It's my understanding from the folks that I've spoken to that this, as you just said, I think we're in a good spot. Appreciate the fact that it was worked through professionally. I think it's a good indication of the relationship.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Enrique?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Julie? Amy?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. Okay, no unfinished business, and then next up is the Ready to Learn plan, new business. Dr. Stalo.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, staff, and community members. As we welcome this new year, we also continue to be challenged, as we have for the past 10 months, about how best to educate our students and keep our students, staff, and families safe. The answers are not easy, and I continue to be incredibly grateful to the Prior Lake Savage area school staff across the district for the truly amazing work that they do each and every day. Much continues to change. Updates come daily, and there are still many questions to be answered. However, we're very excited to be sharing information with you tonight about our plan to bring more students back into school in person. In December, the governor said he believes that schools are the safest place for many of our children to be, and he believes now that we have the experience, the knowledge, and the resources necessary to make schools not only emotionally and academically safe, but a physically, health-wise safe place for students to be too. And we heard many of those things that Jim and Marine staff have been doing. All schools must now implement many new safety requirements and virus mitigation strategies, including reduced social distancing, implementing a rolling start, regular site testing, COVID-19 testing, and the instructional staff will be masked with both masks and a face shield. Joe will be sharing some additional information about that throughout the presentation. We've continued to plan for the return of students, and last Thursday, our Prior Lake Savage Area Schools Incident Command Team met with our regional support team. Again, as a reminder, that team is made up of members from the Minnesota Department of Education, the Minnesota Department of Health, and Scott County Public Health. We shared much of the information that we're going to be sharing with you this evening. We outlined our learning model transition, as well as the safety and health mitigation strategies that we are going to be employing to ensure the safety of our staff and students. And the regional support team supported our plan pending any significant changes to the COVID-19 case numbers or any district operational restraints that we may have. So at this point, I'll ask our district COVID-19 coordinator, Joe Kabushek, to share some data, health and safety practices, and new mitigation strategies with us. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair Ruel, Dr. Stallo, board members. What I'd like to start with is first just where we start every week with our incident command team, which is starting by looking at our Scott County case rate numbers. What you see there are the case rate numbers dating back to the beginning of November. Unfortunately, as we came into November at the county rate, which was mirrored at the state level, we saw high numbers. Our numbers in our county actually peaked very close to 200 cases per 10,000 as we reached that middle part of November. As we continue to look at that graph, though, we notice there has been a gradual and continuous decrease since that point. And one of the things that plays a big role in that would be the governor's executive order, where we closed things down. We had shut down a variety of things from activities to bars and restaurants that led and helped, according to Scott County, to those numbers decreasing. We're currently now below 50. As we talked to Scott County last week, they do not anticipate any large spike post the holiday season. They do expect to see a small blip upward as we reach that 10 to 14 days post the holidays, but they don't expect any large spike compared to what we had seen in early November. What you see now on the screen is the dashboard that we update weekly on our district webpage. Now, as we look at that, there's one thing to keep in mind, and that is when we went to distance learning with all students, we were really relying on families to contact us regarding cases and quarantine numbers. I will tell you that in the beginning that happened, and as to be expected, the longer we were in distance learning, it was not as much of a priority for families. They were focused on what they had to take care of at their home and working with their students and learners at home, and so it didn't become as much of a priority. However, we can also look at it from the positive side, which is we are seeing a mirroring of decreasing, matching what we have seen at the county level. When we moved into distance learning and we started to prepare for what we have coming up, which is bringing students back, we really wanted to look at what are the things that we can do to be prepared for students returning to our buildings. And so one of the first things we did is we looked at our enhanced cleaning protocols, and we reviewed all of the things that we had done in the fall. We worked with operations to say what are the areas and things that we need to make sure we really focus on during the day. Also, having done an entire quarter in hybrid learning, what are the areas that maybe we don't need to clean as often or maybe are not as frequently touched as we maybe thought they would be back in August. And so we adjusted our cleaning protocols. Early learning returned in December, one of the first groups to return, and it was actually really good for us to be able to say, how are we going to handle students and families as we bring people back? And so we reviewed the protocols, we sent letters to our families outlining what's going to be happening, encouraging changes such as we encouraged masks to be worn by our youngest learners. It's not part of the mask requirement, but we've encouraged it, and I know there has been some participation in regards to that, and as well as additional education for our staffing. And then lastly, we continue to look at other pieces of the COVID protocols. One of them I want to really call attention to, which is the quarantine guidelines. There's been a lot of conversation about whether or not you look at reducing the days for quarantine. The CDC has been very clear that it is the safest to follow the original 14-day quarantine guidelines. They've offered up shortening options of 7 and 10 days based on very strict testing criteria for certain workplaces, but we as a district decided that for right now, we are going to continue to follow the 14-day quarantine protocol. As we are bringing back students and staff, we want to make sure we're doing what we can to keep them safe. When the governor, as Dr. Stallo outlined, explained that we would be able to bring back first our youngest learners, there were certain mitigation strategies that we have to make sure that we include in order to be able to open our doors. And so they are listed here. The first one is the rolling start. And so what that means is that we are not allowed to have more than 3 grade levels in a building at one time to start with. We need to allow that group of 3 grades to be in the building, see how our protocols are working, what happens with our case rates, and then we're able to bring back our next level. That's the reason why we're starting with our K1-2. The next group coming in would be our 3-4-5. At the secondary level, we have the advantage of our middle school being 3 grades only, so we're able to bring back all 3 of those grades. At the high school, unfortunately, we have 4 grades. When we talked with the regional support team, we advocated for the opportunity to be able to bring back all 4 grades at the same time, and we were told, unfortunately, no. And so that's why we're looking at the plan of bringing back our 9th and 10th graders, followed by the 11th and 12th graders a little bit later. Another mitigation strategy that we will be implementing is we have the opportunity to provide for our staff free COVID saliva testing every 2 weeks. This is state provided at no cost for the district. So the state has provided us with a set date that we need to provide the saliva testing for our staff. And so We are set up for our first date, which will be Monday, January 25th, and we will be offering that for all employees who are working in a hybrid or in-person model. And so that means on the 25th, it will be offered up to all of our elementary staff, as well as bus drivers and people working in those buildings. We have set up a plan that allows us to do testing at each of the elementary sites as an opportunity to be able to provide participation opportunities for our staff. Another thing that is a mitigation strategy that we must follow is the requirement of face shields and masks, both of them in combination, for our staff. This is going to occur when our staff are working with or near students. And so one of the things I'll be talking about a little bit later is a training which will be outlined for our staff coming up, and we'll be talking about all of the different scenarios, because I know staff have had questions. I've had a lot of conversations with staff about this topic. But the best way to describe it is MDH says we are layering mitigation strategies. There's no way to eliminate risk. But by layering mitigation strategies, we're able to reduce risk by the more layers that we have. That's the reason for the mask and the shield. We as a district are currently having these regulations not only during the school day, but also for our athletics, our activities, and currently any outside user groups who are utilizing our facilities. Another option to provide another layer for staff, if they so choose to use it, is each classroom will have a plexiglass barrier that the teachers can use if they need to be within 6 feet from a student for an extended period of time, or if for some reason a teacher needed to do something with a student where their lips needed to be seen, they could then have both the face shield and a plexiglass barrier, so again they can have 2 layers of protection between. Lunch. When it comes to lunch, we are still required to utilize the 6-foot social distancing in the lunchroom. And so we've been working very closely with our elementary principals to see, is that possible? Because now that we're bringing back more students, that really makes a challenge of being able to have our students seated 6 feet apart in the lunchroom. And so if you are not able to achieve that, you have to go ahead and have the students eat in the classroom. And so we're working with elementary principals. I can tell you right now, it's going to be a combination of both. Really looking at utilizing the lunchroom for our youngest learners so that we don't have kindergartners and maybe even first graders carrying trays of food or things through the building. So they're being very thoughtful with how they are deciding which groups will be where and continuing to work on that. One of the things that changes when you move to in-person learning, and I've shared this multiple times throughout the school year so far, is when we go to in-person learning, we no longer need to follow the 6-foot social distancing rules. Our secondary, when they return in hybrid, they will need to follow those 6-foot social distancing rules. But at the elementary, we will not need to follow that anymore. And so what they suggest is that you try to have students 3 feet apart as much as possible. And as I worked with the elementary principals, they really describe it as that's your personal bubble. You don't want somebody closer than 3 feet to you anyway. And so that's going to be kind of the language we use as we start to train students on that. Students will have an additional mask change, and that is around indoor physical activity. In the fall, students did not need to wear masks when they were exerting themselves in things such as Phi-Ed. That has now changed to match what we have going with the high school league for sports and activities, and so students will be using masks for indoor physical activity, whether it be Phi-Ed, indoor recess, or whatever that might be. Specialists, as we kind of work through, similar to what we saw with the lunch, we're trying to make sure that we follow the protocols. And so in order to be able to hold a specialist in their classroom, such as art or music, there's a series of protocols that we need to follow. And so right now, to get us started, we're going to be starting with the majority of our specialists in the general classroom, where this music teacher, art teacher would come into the general classroom to run that class. We're continuing to work with elementary principals to see what we can do to slowly start to work those classes back into their regular setting if we're able to follow those protocols and procedures. And then the last thing that I had mentioned is we will be providing training for all of our stakeholders regarding these topics. So Staff will be receiving a training that will be sent out to them on Wednesday of this week. Families can anticipate seeing a training coming to them, very similar to what we did in the fall on Friday, and then we will move ahead and students will go through a review of these protocols when they return on their first day back in the building. Last thing that's kind of exciting to talk about is vaccinations. So vaccination, the process has slowly started. Now, I do stress slowly. Scott County is experiencing what we're hearing about across the country right now, which is unknown number of vaccination doses being delivered on a weekly basis. As we talk to Scott County, they're not sure what they're going to get from week to week. They could get 300 doses one week, they could get 1,000 the next week. What they are promising us is as fast as they come in, they are going out. We had the opportunity last week to have some of our health services staff vaccinated, the ones that are working directly with students or staff. Also, those of us, as you can see, I had the opportunity because I will be involved with the COVID saliva testing for staff, and so we then fit into the 1A category. This is constantly changing. I can tell you that tonight I've received another email where Scott County has asked for another set of numbers so that we can look at another group of potential staff to be vaccinated. Based on the rate at which they're receiving the doses, I don't know if it's going to be one large day where they vaccinate our entire staff, because if you think about it, we have almost 1,400 staff in our district, and if they're only receiving anywhere between 300 to 1,000 in a week, that would not work. So they're trying to really take it a chunk at a time, but we are getting there, and we'll continue to get there as we work our way through.
Thanks so much, Joe. As just a reminder, in this current learning model, and we still are in distance learning for all of our grades, but just a reminder, we do have some students that are receiving in-person supports every single day at our elementaries and at our middle schools, so that's been fantastic to have them there. Additionally, our Kids Company has continued to provide childcare and academic support for our students. We have about 50 students at each site, each of our elementary sites there. So even though we're in distance learning, our schools are still have some students in them, which is fantastic. On a recent AMSD meeting that I was on, we did a survey poll to see what date most schools were planning on coming back. And like us, the majority of those districts surveyed were planning on bringing students back the week of January 18th. And you can see on the slide our elementary timeline. As Joe had already pointed out, that we'll be bringing back our K-2 students first. We have opportunity to have some training days or some workshop days and work days, preparation, transition days for our staff, so we won't have school. The 18th is a planned holiday with Martin Luther King Day, but then on January 19th, we will be bringing our K-2 students back in person. Our 3-5 students will remain in hybrid. We'll also have an opportunity to bring back our K-5 center-based students as well at that time. And then on February 1st, we'll have our grades 3 through 5th grade come in person. I've asked Jennifer Molitor, who's the principal at Glendale Elementary, to share some additional information about the planning that she and her elementary principal colleagues have been working on with their staff. Thanks, Jennifer.
Good evening, everyone. We are excited for the return of our students. Distance learning right now is going very well for us. It's been a huge success, and we've got, like Dr. Stallo said, we do have small groups of students coming in, but we are ready for them to be back in person and to see their smiling faces come through our doors. So the elementary principals have been working hard and are continuing to plan for the in-person transition for our K-2 and then eventually our 3-5 students. We've been collaborating with our building leadership teams, they're called our BILTs, and seeking input from them, our grade level teams, along with other departments to ensure a smooth transition for our staff, for our students, and for our families. The planning is huge, and we want to make sure that our transition is smooth and also can lead us into if we needed to go back into hybrid. And that's been our goal all year, is to be able to fluidly flow into any model that we will be going into in the dial. So we're starting with our lunch schedules. That's one of the things that we've been looking at. And like Joe said, we're planning on getting our little ones into the cafeteria. They will be having bag lunches for the time being. And so our kindergarten are going to be our top priority to get in there as much as we can. We all have different sized cafeterias, so we're going to get as many in as we can. And then we'll get the other grade levels in if we can accommodate that also as we look at our capacities in our lunchrooms. We're looking at our arrival and dismissal procedures and making sure that we're getting our kids off safely and also getting our students back onto our buses and into our parent vehicles safely. We're looking at recess because we know that will look different. In the past, our recess has always went along with our lunches, and we no longer can do that this year. So we're looking at how we can make sure we get our kids out and getting some exercise and getting that opportunity. And also, one of our top priorities is looking at all the safety mitigation strategies and making sure that we have those in place. Our teachers are out there with their measuring tools, and they're making sure they've got 3 feet distance, and we'll keep our 6-foot distancing in place and continue to use that throughout our buildings, as we know that's a safe mitigation strategy for all. And then we're working with our teaching and learning and providing guidance with our pacing guides, assessments, and most importantly, our social emotional pieces for our students as they return and for our staff. And a K-5 email, the principals are working on a K-5 email that will be sent home by Friday with information about this transition, our mitigation strategies and procedures that we will be having in our individual buildings as we plan for a successful transition. So thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. Will you forward to the next slide, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. We're also planning, as you know, for the secondary transition to hybrid learning. We know that transitions are hard, especially as Jennifer said, when a lot of the comments that we've been hearing is that distance learning is going really well. And what I want to assure board members and our listening public is, we learned a lot last spring about distance learning. And there was a lot of trepidation with people as we moved back into distance learning. And I hope what we were able to show our community and our parents and our families and our students was that the work of our staff and administrators and teaching and learning team with input really did a fantastic job listening and saying, okay, what's the absolute best model for distance learning that we can come up with? And we've been implementing that, and our teachers have been doing a fantastic job, and I've, again, heard a lot of positives about that. And because of that, I know there are some fears with this transition, because I think people are looking at this and saying, we're going to go back to what was in the fall. And we've got a couple of principals here with us tonight that are going to share some updates with you. We know that we're not going to do what we did in the fall. We're going to do high-quality hybrid 2.0, taking, again, the lessons that we've learned, along with input that we've gathered and will continue to gather to make sure that our staff and our students have the tools to be able to do a hybrid model in a way that's manageable for all of them. So with that, because the other side of this is we also know how important it is to have students in our building. And the truth of the matter is, and I think this is really important for people to understand, that whether we're in hybrid or whether we're in person, in terms of our secondary students, we will always have this year some students that are in distance learning. So that won't change even when we go in person. So I think that's important to remember, and that's why getting a model around this hybrid right now that works both when I have students in front of me as well as when I've got students at home is going to be absolutely vital. So with that, I want to hand it over to Dr. John Biesick, who's the principal of Prior Lake High School, as well as Dr. Dan Edwards, who's the principal of Twin Oaks, to share some additional updates with us as we look at the transition for secondary.
Yeah, I think a key piece of what you said there, we were talking today about the fact that we were in distance last spring, and people had some trepidation about that when we were going back to it, and we made some tweaks, and people feel pretty good about the distance plan we have now, same thing, where, we had some things that we were already planning to change for second quarter if we were staying in hybrid. We were already talking about some synchronous lessons and doing some things and making some changes. We never got the opportunity because we went right into distance. So those things that we were looking at, we placed in distance, so we still want to carry those out. We have some time for some conversations here that, at the earliest, this would happen at quarter time, because we thought when, Dr. Stallo asked us, we said, it doesn't make sense to have another transition until at least the quarter time, and if the numbers are right, we're ready to do this. But there is trepidation, whenever you make a transition, people are like, okay, I've got something that's going well, and if you're gonna change that, it just makes people a little bit nervous, and you got the vaccines coming and all that, so it's just, there's that reassuring piece, and there's just talking it through, and I think people have this high expectation of what they want to deliver. So if they have kids back, I think they want it to look like when kids are always, all kids are there. And they want to focus on those kids that are there. So they have a tough time with that idea of some kids there and some kids at home. But we've shown on the, in the distance learning that you can do some high level instruction, via the technology, and we feel that we can continue that. But it is, we're going to be spending, we're all having meetings with our staff, just getting feedback, hearing some of those concerns, and explaining to them why we can't do some of the things that they're requesting. People have questions about scheduling and this and that, and we're just trying to explain, okay, this is why that decision is made, and this is why, and we are listening. We're trying to find out, okay, what can we do to kind of ease your concerns, and what suggestions do you have that might work? So that's what we're going to do over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, one of the things I want to add is as we are strengthening it, just making sure we point out the key thing that we are going to take away from what we've done so well in this quarter two as we've been in distance learning is that synchronous instruction for each class each day. I think feedback overwhelmingly has been very positive on all sides of this equation, and I know that we have seen it, and certainly our teachers obviously see it each day. But when we visit classrooms via Google Meet, I joke when I walk in, I'm just walking the halls, but I'm in the Google Meet, it's totally different. But I comment to the kids, and they're all engaged, and great learning is taking place, and we want obviously for that to continue. And then obviously bringing them back, it would be of great benefit to have in-person support and for those opportunities. So to that end of those two key elements, we worked just this morning on a survey that we'll be sending out here momentarily this week to staff, students, and parents to gather additional feedback about what are those specific pieces that they want to make sure we are bringing forward in the hybrid 2.0 model. And so we're going to be gathering that feedback here in the coming couple of weeks. And as Dr. Bezick said, we'll be meeting. We had our middle school first of 2 January built meetings last week. Our built members have been tasked, as Jennifer Mahler talked about their built at the elementary level. We obviously lean on those leadership folks quite a bit, and asking them to gather feedback from their colleagues to help us create the best version. And then we'll be digesting that over the next few weeks in preparation for bringing staff in for planning days on February 1st and 2nd, and then specifically at the middle school, be ready to roll on February 4th with all of our grades. So that's really what we feel confident about where we're headed, where we've been, and lessons that we've learned along the way to help provide the best educational experience for all of our stakeholders.
And I'm sure there'll be some questions. We'll keep going through the presentation, but then I'm sure you've got some questions, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to be sure we had some of our principals here this evening. The next slide just does talk a little bit about the input we'd gathered, and Dr. Edwards talked specifically about a more formal process and survey that'll be going out, but along the way, we've been in multiple ways collecting, getting, soliciting, and sometimes not soliciting, but hearing input from folks, which is great because that has all helped us us to improve and to continue to do everything we can to meet the needs of our students. Just a couple other department updates, and I think either Jim or Maureen, if you want to speak to the transportation. Again, some of this information we share weekly at our incident command team meeting and more, but we thought it was important as we're making this transition for board members to also hear some of the work of some of our departments. So, Jim, thanks.
Thank you. So we are preparing to bring return of K2 on January 19th. Kind of a little different model than the hybrid. It does change throughout the system now because we have to go back to bell times. Because our buses are interdependent, different tiers, all schools will be on regular bell times. No new COVID cases reported by drivers this week or the last couple of weeks, which is really good. We have, if we get a run of COVID through bus drivers, I think we can handle 5 drivers out, and then it seriously impacts our ability to deliver transportation services. The district will provide saliva testing and vaccinations for the bus company staff, which is really reassuring for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So for custodial maintenance updates, just one new COVID-related absence with our staff, which is our best rate so far. Custodial schedules are changing to accommodate the return of activities and user groups in all of our buildings. We had modified our schedules during the distance learning pause and pause. We've been coordinating with the child nutrition and principals to minimize the impacts of food in classrooms every day. So whether it's garbage or trying to develop new ways to get food to classrooms, we've been coordinating with them. We have additional PPE, masks and shields coming from the Department of Education. We'll be picking those up this Wednesday. We'll be getting the same type of masks that we received earlier, the same quantity. We are receiving, we are distributing masks and face shields and also the plexiglass barriers that Joe Kubuchek mentioned at the end of this week. So by Monday, all the elementary schools will have their masks, shields, and barriers, and by next Wednesday, all of the schools, secondary schools, will have them. So, any questions?
There may be, Maureen. So actually, Maureen, would you stay and just advance the next couple of slides for me as well? Just on behalf of Emily Malone, and you've heard already a lot about child nutrition services, but I also wanted to highlight that certainly their world in this transition will change greatly as well. They're going to have to really be thinking about those menu options as they have students that are eating in the cafeteria as well as students who will be eating in their classrooms. They also will continue the curbside delivery of meals, so they're going to have to look at location at that. So I think as the elementary kids come back, they'll move some of that to secondary, but then once the secondary schools come back, they'll have to be doing both of those two things at the same time. And then certainly those new health and safety mitigation strategies are impacting their world as well. And then on the next slide, again, just highlighting Kids Company. Kids Company has continued through January to provide that child care and academic support during the school day. Beginning on January 19th, as we transition students back, they'll be doing both before and after school care as well as during school care yet for those 3rd through 5th graders. And then just getting to that place once we get all the kids back that they will be doing what they have done a fantastic job serving our students with academic support. And I think they're very excited to also get back to their expertise of before and after school care as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Russ Reitz. And as I do, I do know that at the last board meeting, the board acted on Russ's resignation. At that time, we were doing a whole lot of things that evening, and I don't want to say that it was forgotten at all. But we know you'd be coming back tonight. We know you're coming back January 25th. But with that, Russ, I just want to publicly thank you for your leadership. I think that great leaders show up in times of crisis, and during this COVID pandemic, you have certainly worked tirelessly also to ensure that the priority of taking care of our kids and getting them back into the arena, and whatever that means for them has been something you've been steadfast in. So I just want to thank you for everything you've done through that time, as well as through the 6 years that you've served in your position. We're going to miss you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, feeling is mutual. So just a few updates here with activities and athletics. We returned to practice on January 4th. It's gone quite well. We also have, those are our sports groups. We have some activity groups that are beginning to come back slowly in small groups. They're still competing virtually. Many of our practices are still virtual, but we are able to bring some students back, like a Knowledge Bowl team in groups of 4 to practice or compete in the same room, but do so virtually. So that's been great. Games resume this week. We'll have contests at home on Thursday and Saturday. And then we pretty much go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday here until the middle of March to get all of those contests in for our winter season. I just want to quickly go over spectators. We're going to limit the amount of spectators we can have. MDH did approve up to 150 spectators, but no more than 25% of your capacity. And we do have some limitations based on our facilities. So we do know we can get 2 spectators per athlete for home and away visitors for basketball. We're going to try to do 2 visiting spectators per athlete for hockey, but 5 home spectators per athlete. So we will not exceed 150 at Dakota, but there's plenty of room there. It looks like 1 spectator per visiting athlete. We are going to try to get 2 spectators per home athlete for wrestling. And things will change on the road too based on what schools are allowed to bring in. Gymnastics will be home spectators only, 2 per athlete. Boys swim will be home spectators only. It's looking like seniors will have 2 spectators, but all other underclassmen will likely only get 1 based on capacity at the pool. And then cheer, we're doing meets virtually, but we'll have 2 spectators invited per athlete. Dance are all away, but 2 spectators per athlete should be able to attend dance meets. Some mitigation strategies, we are having coaches wearing masks and shields when working with athletes. We have some exceptions. If the shield gets in the way during a spotting situation for gymnastics or while a coach is sparring with a wrestler, they're allowed to remove the shield but not the mask. And then our Nordic and Alpine coaches are wearing masks when they're outside but not shields. Some other mitigation strategies, athletes are expected to come ready to practice and play. We have very limited to no locker room use at all. We are obligated to allow locker room use for visiting wrestling teams. Our boys swim and dive go in a few at a time, shower before getting into the pool. And then hockey is going to allow a few athletes in at a time to get skates on at the arena. Mask use is required during play. We do have some exceptions. Wrestlers, swim and divers, and gymnasts are allowed to remove the mask while competing, but then must put the mask right back on when they're not competing. Officials will wear masks, but all of our table workers are doing masks and shields. Visiting coaches will be given a shield if they arrive without one. We are setting up for contact tracing at all events, so we will have lower levels that aren't required to purchase a ticket check in. We of course send the list in advance, so they'll be ready for them when they get to the check-in table. We're allowed up to 35 athletes on a bus. We know that if there's a positive case, 2 seats in front, behind, and to the side will be asked to quarantine even with a mask. So we're working on that. Many of our athletes will be getting a ride or driving to events. And then athletes are placed in predetermined pods, and we are doing everything we can not to disrupt those pods. So tryouts looked a little bit different this year because they tried out in a pod and have pretty much stayed in that pod. The good news is, in a lot of cases, we were able to keep more athletes this year than we do normally. Any questions on activities or athletics returning or any of the mitigation strategies?
You can move it to the next slide, Russ, and you can go ahead because that's where we're going to have questions. And before we do, just again, tonight was a brief presentation capturing an overview of the unbelievable work that's happening across the district in order for us to not only serve kids each day, but constantly prepare for how can we keep helping to ensure that we get to see them more. And I hope that's part of what you heard tonight. I know there are questions and be happy to answer them. So why don't we go ahead and start with activities and athletics since Russ is here.
Oh, you want to do it like that? I was going to say,
Or however, yeah, doesn't matter.
well, I was thinking go around the table, just to
Okay.
give everybody a chance. So,
You're the chair.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Jonathan, do you have any
Put me on the
questions,
spot.
comments?
Russ, before you run away, a question that came up at my house over the weekend is, I think I heard maximum of 25 competing in anything, and my former dancer daughter said, that's a pretty small dance line. Is that how it's working? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, pods are allowed up to 25. We have 24 this year for varsity kick, so it happened to work. But in some years, that could have been very difficult, yes.
For all of you who participated, I just thank everybody's work and effort. Joey, and you went through the numbers. I mean, I just quickly looked at the chart, and in the 6 weeks that were included in that chart, about 9% of the county's population tested positive. Just based on that, because it added up to about 900 in those 6 weeks per 10,000. So, I mean, it's remarkable that we are bringing it down. And so I think a lot of the statewide mitigation things have helped.
Okay. Enrique, do you have any questions?
I do. I have a question for Russ. So seeing that there's 35 athletes allowed per bus, does that mean that we have to increase the number of buses that are required to transport athletes and coaches and equipment over to the different venues where our athletes are competing?
Yeah, we're monitoring that. We would like not to have to combine two pods, so we might have a 9A basketball team travel with JV because their games start at the same time, and that would be 24 on a bus. But we know that that can complicate things with pods, so we're doing everything we can to eliminate the total number of buses needed. Of course, this is the first week we're ordering them, and most of our programs chose to find alternative ways of getting to the game. They sign a waiver as part of their registration process, and so we are hardly using any buses this week. But I do anticipate that we'll have to use some as we move into the deeper into the season.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for the service you've done for this district all the way through to the finish line. Adding a little sports reference here for you. Let's transition to your next role.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amy, any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question for you, Russ, and I'll reiterate Enrique's statements. Thanks for all you've done for sports and the kids, and especially with the MSHSL. It's a lot of work, big commitment, and I've got some happy kids right now, too, and their friends, so thank you. The really, popular topic right now is about masks while competing. Do you anticipate, this is pure speculation, but you're part of the conversation daily, do you anticipate that changing for those that are competing?
Yeah, it's hard to say if I anticipate. There is the Let Them Play folks have filed a lawsuit, and it has not been heard yet. There's been some discussion that they'll need to provide evidence, the science behind the decision of asking our athletes to wear a mask while competing. I'm told that they have that evidence and they have the science behind it, but whether or not that's out, I'm not sure. I do think as we move through the season, we might see some of these mitigation strategies relaxed. But for now, I'm just telling everybody, do the best you can with it, self-monitor. We've added increased breaks. We've asked our athletes to communicate about how they're feeling, when we rest, when we take the water breaks, those types of things, we're figuring out as we go. There's been a Star Tribune article and a Pioneer Press article about mask wearing with athletes. And the solution is not just get used to it, but I will say it seems like there's an acclimation period of a couple of weeks and kids are getting more used to wearing masks, but still very much a concern for some of our parents and our coaches, so. monitoring.
Thank you.
Julie, any questions?
I'll reiterate, thank you, Russ, for your years of service. We will miss you. And I just want to say thank you to all the staff. So excited for those kindergarten through 5 to get back in the buildings. I think our kids have learned a lot of new habits over the past several months with just wearing a mask and washing our hands. And so I think that it's just going to be just great for our community to see those kids get back. And then subsequently the secondary. So thanks for all your hard work.
Mary?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for Dan and John. You know, we've heard a lot of the trials and tribulations of the teachers teaching hybrid A, hybrid B, distance learning, taking emails from students, et cetera. And I know you talked a little bit about hybrid 2.0. And I do understand, and I did hear that meetings with the BILT leads and various, you know, feedback from the educators are still underway. But what do you anticipate will be, that you know of or that you can speak to, will be changed with regards to the load on the educators in secondary?
Well, I think one of the big things, you know, we tried to get across to teachers when we were starting out that I kind of used a phrase, plan like you're in distance with the opportunity to see kids 2 days a week. And I think people, you know, after having been on distance last spring when they had kids in hybrid, I think they just wanted to teach the kids that were in front of them. So it was like they were trying to create 3 different groups. You know, when they had the A and B groups, they were trying to fully concentrate on the A kids on Monday, the B kids on Tuesday, and then fit the hybrid kids in there. And there wasn't as much synchronous pieces, even with the A and B kids, as we would have liked. So I think they were trying to teach to 3 different groups. And I think the blessing, you know, I'm not crazy about, you know, having to had gone to distance, but I think that forced people to say, hey, I need to try and use the technology to present the lesson in a way to all kids, whether they're in front of me or whether they're at home. And even if we didn't have distance learning kids, we're still going to have kids that are in hybrid A and hybrid B. So we're not trying to cut things in half and teach half of it one day and half when the other kids are there. We're still going to have those kids at home. So I think that synchronous piece is going to be a big key, and to try and do that synchronous piece for all 3 of those groups at one time, so it's one lesson, and then have the opportunity to work with those kids when you break off what ones that come in and see you in hybrid. So I think there's some of that we need to say, hey, you need to allow yourself to do that. And because I think when they get them in front of them, they want to spend the time like they've spent in the past when they had all the kids there. And it's not the same, you know, so we have to reconfigure, and we have to let them know that it's okay to do that. I think they put this, I hate to say it, they put a little bit of that stress on themselves, and we do too, because we do create the boundaries for them to work in, but, you know, we got to keep reminding them that, hey, you do the best that you can, but it's got to be viable for you and for the kids, but it's got to be viable for you too. You can't run yourself into the ground, because that's not good for them or not good for the kids, so.
I think the piece I would add too, and part of these conversations that we had just last week, is around the technologies that we want to make sure and are in the process of making sure that classrooms are equipped with the technology so that that can happen, so that you can deliver the lesson and students at home are getting it, as are the students that are in front of you, and then carving out the class and structuring the class in such a way. And I think our teachers have really grown accustomed to that during this distance learning of starting the class out, getting everybody engaged right away, checking in, finding out where kids are at. I mean, one of the things that we all know is important and sometimes has been lost throughout this is the social emotional learning of our students, and the check-in and engagement. And actually those are some questions that we framed in this survey that we're sending out to kids around what are some of those things that they value, so that we can plan for those when we're in person in the hybrid model. So I think that finding the tools so that teachers feel confident, and I'll tell you, 10 months ago, it's amazing how far we've come in the last 9 months or 10 months or however long it's been, of the tools that our teachers are now using almost second nature. Like, and from Google Meets to other resources, that, I mean, obviously our use of Schoology has just really shot up there, and familiarity with that, and our students' ability to use it, and so all of those things, and we just keep capitalizing on that and keep making it better, while at the same time giving some permission, reiterating permission that we've already given to our staff, that take the structure, like Dr. Stallo said earlier, we are going to have to, throughout this school year, have to give the opportunity for students to transition to distance learning at any time. So we have to embrace that, and while at the same time, when we have the opportunity to have them in front of them, take full advantage of that to the extent we can.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that there's less pressure on the teachers, that there's going to be some discussions about this, and they're going to have potentially a lot more opportunity. What we've been hearing is the stress and the work hours and stuff like that has been incredibly high. But that also leads me to my next question, and that is one of the issues that has been plaguing us, literally, with the pandemic, has been the lack of substitute teachers at both the elementary as well as the middle school and high school levels. Do you have any anticipation of that getting better going forward as we close out the year, or what is the status of that?
It's a struggle all the time, but we've been lucky. We're lucky that people want to sub in our district. They enjoy working with our kids, and they always say our staff and our classes they like coming in because it's well prepared. They know what to do. For us, I'm still going to have the issue when we do come back into hybrid that I have a number of staff on accommodations. I sometimes have things set up where if teachers are still going to need to quarantine if they get sick or get exposed, kids are still going to need to quarantine and all that. And that's part of the beauty of having, I don't know what it's called the beauty, but that's part of the advantage of having the model that we have, because if you're in a hybrid class and you start getting sick and have to quarantine for 14 days, 2 weeks, you don't have to go. We're already teaching in a distance type format as well, so you can stay with your class, and a teacher can also teach from home, and that's where we've had the blue gym experience. I don't mean to joke about, but it actually has helped us have a space where if I have 4 teachers that don't show up one day, I have about 10 classrooms of space in the blue gym where I could move their class down there and the kids could still log on and get instruction from their teacher, because they had to, they were exposed the night before, but they could teach from at home. So, you might have 6 classes, but one class you might have to go down into the gym and, sit and get your instruction for that hour while, your teacher's out. They're not sick enough to not work, but they have to be quarantined. So we're trying to make accommodations. We've been, we think we have good systems in place that can help keep the ship afloat, keep things moving.
And I would add to that too, that I happen to know a staff member in my building had a death in the family, is going to be out on Friday, made plans. I actually happened to be in that staff member's Google Meet today, heard her talking about the week and what, preparing the students for that independent work and the tools that they would need to do that. I mean, we all know how much more independent our students have become throughout this. And the teacher taking advantage of those things that they've taught them to do, and having confidence that in her absence, due to a death in the family, that she's not going to be there, but the students are going to have their school experience for that particular class on Friday.
I did see a little bit of an aside, but I saw some comments that a teacher had asked kids, what have they learned through this process? She was trying to do some SEL work, just kind of bond with kids, and just some of those comments, she shared some of them with me, without the names, and just their comments about, hey, how I've learned how to just kind of handle things that I didn't think I could handle before. I'm able to go home and spend time by myself, where I used to always think I had to be with people. I'm thankful actually for the time I've been able to spend with my parents and my sister, which, I find hard to say. One kid actually said, nothing would surprise me. I could turn on the news and say, they'd say aliens had landed. I'd go, yep, that's about sounds right. It's just, they're learning to cope, and they're learning some different skills that they didn't have before. And some of them are real honest. They say, I'm not saying I'm not a procrastinator, and I'm doing as well as I'd like to do, but I have been able to kind of try and learn how to budget my time and pick up some things that I haven't done before. So, I mean, they are kind of seeing the, you know, okay, what can I take out of this that I can use, you know, in the future?
And my last question, Stacy, is on logistics. With kindergarten through grade 2, rolling back in slowly but surely, and then doing the elementary and the hybrid and the going back and forth. You know, Jim, when we talked, when this whole year started, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that the bus routes were going to stay the same throughout all of this, and just obviously pick up different kids every day and all that. But you also mentioned about when you were doing your presentation here about bell times and things like that. What are the actual changes, if any, that are really going to occur with the bus routes and the logistics, et cetera?
Great questions, Mary, thank you. So the reason we kept our bus routes, bus stops consistent is because as we move up or down the dial, it eliminates a lot of confusions for family. We had a great set of stops, and so as we move up and down again, it eliminates confusion. When I talk about bell times, what I mean is that we have to go back to regular hours of transportation. Currently, we're providing different programs, different opportunities, but that goes away once we start running 3 tiers. And when we bring K2 back, then we basically are back in school as far as transportation is concerned.
So same bus routes, just the standard
Same routes,
times.
same stops.
Okay.
And same times for the kids.
Right.
Other than the specialty programs we've been providing service for.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Can I ask one more question there? Because I was just wondering, when we do that for the elementary level, it obviously doesn't affect secondary until they're in hybrid, right?
Correct. Other than the ones we are bringing in, they'll have to follow the secondary school schedule.
Right.
Yeah, so like.
Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, so two examples. We're bringing back some of our special education setting 3 programs that have been partial days. They will go to full days, and that move will become effective next week. And also at the middle school, we've been providing transportation on Wednesdays. That will not be, and we really had the luxury of make it whatever time it was we needed it to be, or wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But it will follow an early release schedule. So if the students need transportation, they'll have to stay with us at the middle school until noon in order to get that. So.
But the 7:25 normal,
Yep.
7:25
Yeah, they'll
at
be
the
coming
middle
to
school
normal
would
start
not
times.
start
times,
until the hybrid.
Yep.
And same with high school with the 8.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Michael?
Thank you.
I guess my question is for the 3 principals. A general one. First, Jennifer, just a quick question for you. We got a sense that we know there's some trepidation, at the secondary level, and you're very excited, and that's great to hear that enthusiasm. Do you have a sense that the building principals at the elementary level feel like the teachers are, for the most part, comfortable with coming back in the full-time in-person? And I'm putting you on the spot, I realize.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of feedback from our staff saying, we're ready, it's
Okay.
time. We just want to see their faces again. We want to be with them one-on-one and have the opportunity to work with them again.
Great, thank you for that. And then I guess for the 3 of you, I don't even know if you can directly answer this, but, from the outside world, you hear all this, we got to hurry up and get students caught up, and we're losing all this time, and there's all that maybe unnecessary pressure on our teachers coming back, but there's also, few of you have mentioned that social emotional piece. Not only the COVID and the added, mental health issues, just in the news and everything else. Do you feel like the teachers at all those levels sort of have some wiggle room in terms of just allowing them the permission to be there for their students? Does that make sense, that question?
Ooh, this is right up my alley.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
No, we're looking at this from an elementary level of, these are our first days of school again.
Okay.
We're starting a new year, and we're going to build that community. We're going to take time to listen and hear the voices of our students and really let them share their stories, because we also know that this is a time in our history that is unique, and we want to be able to validate that and listen to our students and just spend time getting to know them. They have never seen each other all together until this time. So it'll be a time for us to use our responsive classroom, use our second step curriculums, and just build that community.
Okay, thank you.
I just, while John's coming up, I just want to echo something that John spoke to. And I think you're right. I think we need to decide what our narrative is, and we need to tell our story. Because John shared many examples of what was gained, what students have shared, they've learned and they've gained through this. And it's going to be really easy for adults to talk about everything that's been lost. And I think that we have to be really careful, and I know our teachers will be, is what's been gained, how do we listen to their voices, how do we find out what else they've learned. And academically, we're going to meet students where they are, and we're going to help them grow and get to that next place. But I think we do have to be really cautious of how we even talk about that when we, at some point, when testing comes back and take a look at that, we need to also decide as a district what emphasis we're putting on that as well as other things.
I think that
John,
was
go
the
ahead.
foundation of my question too, is saying, let's not put the focus on what we're missing and racing to
Yeah.
catch up to, but how, how else can you handle that
And we're
and take
handing,
that off?
I try to talk to the staff, we're handing most of these kids off to each other, so we know
Oh,
what,
yeah.
we just need to have those conversations between grade levels of, and, where did we get? And so, I mean, and it's not like we're unique, we're not the only ones going through this, so everybody's going through this, and we're handing them off to each other, so what is it, where do we need to, fill in gaps, and what do we need to continue on with, how far did we get, and yes, we need to not make people feel like they're in a hole, because it's just different. I mean, even the colleges are acknowledging that, it's different, the assessments are different, the applications for colleges are different, the visits are different, some are not requiring the ACT and different things, so it's just a different environment.
Thank you.
Okay, just a couple, I think, you guys have pretty much answered the questions I have. Mary's question regarding, and I know you emphasized it in the, presentation, was just, the secondary and coming back and the strains on the teachers, and I think, John, when I was touring, when we were in distance, there were some teachers teaching that synchronous, full live, and we're handling it. And I think just changing that mindset, I mean, I know it's not that simple. I'm not trying to belittle, I know it's gonna be a lot of work, I know it's different for different subjects. But, I think what parents have really appreciated, and students, is the schedule, that they feel like, what I hear from people is, I feel like I'm in school now. And so I think that's really important to continue that forward, and I know we're committed to doing that. And I think what's best for kids, I mean, I think that's the question we always ask ourselves. I don't think if we have the opportunity to bring kids back in person, that having a kid sit in their basement till June is a great thing. I just, I think when we start to look at the big picture of everything, we need to try to get back to some type of normal, see, as much as we can with, obviously, safety. And, my one other comment is I'm glad to see that we're gonna get some input from teachers, and staff and students as we move forward with moving kids, back. I think it's important, and, we can learn a lot about where we're at, but I do think we really have a good pulse on where we're going and the path forward, so thank you. And then Russ, I'm gonna give you a shout out, I don't know if you're still here. Oh. So thank you. Thank you for all your work. We are deeply gonna miss you, so, and you have some big shoes to fill, so thank you, and good luck.
Stacy, could I ask Joe a couple questions that I forgot? I'm sorry, I know you thought we were all wrapped up, but.
Yeah, so we'll do a couple clarifying questions, and then I wanna move on.
Sorry,
Here, so.
just really quick, and maybe you guys even know, I just don't know, and I think people probably do want to know, when the saliva testing starts on the 25th, what's the turnaround time on that? Is that the rapid test?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
the vault saliva test, so we should receive the results in 24 to 48 hours is what they're telling us.
Okay. And then secondly, you didn't touch on this, and it may be just because you don't know, but I feel obligated to ask if we have a timeline for our staff to get vaccinated, if we've been given any indication.
They haven't given us, their response was 4 to 7 weeks.
Okay.
Because again, when we're receiving, when the county's receiving anywhere between 300 to 1,000 per week, they just
That's
don't
how
know.
it
Yep.
times out. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Moving on, next item is our superintendent contract. And we touched on it a little bit in December, but really bringing it forward tonight. And we are very much pleased to present a new 3-year contract to Dr. Salo. Obviously, like I said, this is her third contract, and it represents the commitment that she has to our district, as well as our board's commitment to her and the direction into which she's leading our district. In these unprecedented times, our school leaders have been challenged to unbelievable amounts. And to continue to serve our students, staff, and families, I want to thank Dr. Stallo on behalf of the board for her leadership, and especially over this last really incredibly difficult year. We appreciate your commitment and thorough decision-making, and for keeping what is best for kids at the forefront of every decision. The executive committee has worked with our district's general counsel to present a fair and negotiated contract for the next 3 years. This will commence on July 1st of 2021 and will be in place for 3 years. I just want one note that we do have that's a little different other than some of the other contracts in the couple of years past here is we will be opening her contract up next year just to consider the salary increase for year 2 and 3 as we want to watch what's happening with the state's budget forecast, since that's rather iffy right now. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's contract. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Enrique. Any comments or questions? Jonathan?
Yeah,
Yep, thank you.
First off, I think I want to mention a big thank you to past chair Lee Shimmick. She took a big role in this process. It was important to her. She really wanted this to be done in December. She wanted to be the last thing that she did. Unfortunately, there were those minor little language hiccups that had to get proved, and we pushed it off to this month. So thank you to Lee. Thank you to Stacy, who did an amazing amount of research and spent a ton of time figuring out what's going on in other districts, and appreciate your efforts on that front. I think it bears, it's worth mentioning that when we started this process, there were a couple of priorities as a committee that we identified. The first one is we've got to keep people. When we get people who are important to this district, it's a competitive marketplace. We need to recognize that. But a second piece to that was we discussed wanting to pay those good people while they're employed by us and not afterward. And there are, it's common superintendent contracts to have post-employment benefits. And we really wanted, as a principle, to be paying you while you're here, is what we wanted to be able to do. There are some contracts that will eventually sunset within the district that have big payouts at the end. We didn't want to create those future liabilities. We felt it was sound and conservative management of the district's finances to have that those be all currently recognized expenses. And finally, Dr. Stallo, you said a couple of minutes ago, great leaders show up in crisis. Your leadership through this crisis has been invaluable. And so I enthusiastically support another 3-year contract.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the table. This will be a roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Enrique?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. Okay, and next up is policy, and there's no policies, which is kind of nice. Administrative reports, superintendent report.
Thank you, Chair Ruel. At Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And our collective work is always focused on that mission. And tonight I've just got a couple of things I'd like to update the board with. Kindergarten enrollments. Enrollment for the 2021-22 school year begins on Thursday. We've been communicating with incoming kindergarten families to share enrollment information and resources. And we have also added 2 kindergarten events encouraging families to save the date. The format of these events will depend on what's happening with the COVID-19 safety protocols as to whether or not we can hold those in person or virtually. But right now we're looking at March 4th as a Connect to Kindergarten event, and then on May 18th as a kindergarten open house. So excited to get that enrollment started this week and start welcoming our next class of students. And then we also, I just want to remind our families that we've got some support opportunities for them. Our district has teamed up with Scott County to provide a series of virtual webinars offering mental health supports to students during COVID-19. The webinars began in December, and then there'll be additional topics that are continuing this month. Parents and guardians can still register for those free webinars. A couple of the topics on January 14th from 5 to 6, anxiety, depression, and suicide prevention will be discussed. And then building resiliency and healthy coping skills will be the topic of a January 21st event. Parents can visit any school website or a district Facebook page to register for the webinars, and then they will be emailed the link to attend. So great service for our families. Thank you.
Okay, administrative reports. Anybody? No? Okay. Board reports. I'm going to start with Nana.
Hello, so, do I use this?
Yep, they can
Okay.
hear you. Yep, you're on the screen.
Perfect. So I just have a couple talking points that I've gathered from the student body, especially with being in different leadership positions. I see different students throughout, online Google Meets, and I've been talking to them. And a couple things students have been feeling coming up to, the end of the semester is a lot of stress, which, in these times is understandable. Students are stressed, trying to make up work, keep up with learning. And personally, I feel like there's a disconnect between teachers and students and even my classmates. But I know some teachers are trying to do smaller breakout rooms, one-on-one sessions with students, just trying to find a connection, because right now it feels like, just talking for myself, it feels like, I'm just going to class every day and it's becoming a chore, because I enjoy going to school. I love going to school. I love building the connections with my teachers and my peers. And I feel like that was lost with distance learning, which, will happen. But I feel like we need to find some ways to incorporate relationship building during these times. Then another point I had is we're digital age students. We grew up with internet, phones, computers, and we constantly know what's going on around us. With recent events happening at our capital, lots of students are feeling the tension from those events, and it does affect us in our schoolwork. We're thinking about it, like we have so many questions that we can't always have answered at home or from our parents. So lots of students are still trying to find ways to understand and grasp everything that's going on around us. We as students, we do understand the effects of COVID and how we do have to be in this digital age as for now, but as we heard, we're hopefully going to be going back into a hybrid model, which is exciting. Lots of people are excited about that. I'm excited about that, to finally get some sort of order back into my life. Then just from personal speaking, lots of teachers have been having breaks during units, which I think is very helpful, because some teachers are just so quick trying to, get through everything, make sure they're teaching us everything, getting all the points that they need covered, but they forget to stop in their tracks and be like, hey, How are my students feeling? Are we going too fast? Do we need to put in breaks? And lots of my teachers have been putting in like mental breaks. So in between units, we don't go straight to chapter. They usually stop, put out surveys. I've had teachers putting out videos on like how to manage stress, how to be positive, and just how to, make yourself feel better in times like this, and which is really important. It gives me a time to step back, think, catch my breath before working on the next unit, working on the next project, and that's a very important thing that I've appreciated from teachers doing that. So overall, just trying to get past the disconnect and building more relationships, because that's a very part of education, building relationships. When we build relationships with our teachers and staff, it makes it easier for students to go to the teacher with a question when they don't understand anything. But overall, we're trying our best to do good, and we're excited to get back. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any board reports? Anyone have? Okay, Michael.
First of all, last week, the Early Learning Advisory Group met for the first time of the year, and it was the first meeting with Erin Metaxen. And that was great to meet her, Lori Perker as well, and then some of the staff and parents. And so exciting as they look at all the different options coming up and kind of adjusting to their new staffing situation. Also, a very direct ask, and for those who may be listening, is we're also looking at ways to add more people to the Early Learning Advisory Council. So parents who do have students in those programs or outsiders who may have an interest or expertise, please do contact either through the board, we can get you in contact, or the district office, or directly with one of your teachers in the early learning programs. So that we can bring more voices to the table. It's a great, hardworking group, and they do fabulous things. And then Stacy and Enrique will probably also comment, but our engagement and legislative committee met today, and pardon me?
Oh, yes, I said yes.
Oh, yeah, and
I can't see Enrique, and that's why I'm kind of freaking out, because I can only see
Yeah, I
Enrique's
see his
top of his
eyes.
head. I gotta move that screen.
We're looking forward to meeting with our legislators on February 1st. So I guess that's our main focus right now, is we're really getting involved in the legislative issues that will impact us.
Okay, anybody else have a board report? Mary?
We haven't had any meetings regarding the committees that I'm on. However, as many are aware, that I do sit on the Minnesota Department of Education, Science, as well as Math Standards that were approved, and of course are going to make significant changes to some of our secondary programs coming forward. However, as per the schedule, the new social studies standards were released, and they're open for public comment in February. And they did make some considerable changes to have more well-rounded historical and social studies topics and requirements that do take into account more holistic historical events that involve people of color within the United States and the state of Minnesota. So I highly encourage everyone to log on to the MDE site. You can get all of the drafts, and again, the public comment is available starting in February. Also, I did attend the AMSD meeting, and I also attended the Scott County's second review, because I think the first results were revealed over the summer for the 2019 Student Health Survey. And they are also available at Scott County. So if anyone's interested in seeing those, particularly before the February 16th discussion at City Council about vaping, I would highly encourage it.
Enrique, did you have anything to say? I can't see you, sorry. I only can see the top of his head. Put your hand up if you want to speak. I can't. Sorry.
I'm here.
Okay. Did you have a board report? I'm sorry.
I'm just adding on a little bit to Michael's report with respect to the community action or community engagement and legislative action committee. So we are also, in addition to preparing for the legislative are meeting with our legislators on February 1st, which will be by Google Meet, by the way. We're also looking at what those next steps are in terms of moving forward with the adopted resolution on the commitment to equity and inclusion. So some of the outcomes on that will also include board training. So it's just something to keep an eye on and be aware of in the future as we look to establish some of those components to keep on raising our awareness on race and equity.
Okay, thank you.
No other reports?
Okay. And I'll just report a little bit on the AMSD. I know a number of you, Dr. Stahl sent out the preview. It was very informative. I think it's always kind of a good thing to start the year off. And we did hear from, you know, I guess the highest of legislators, which we don't always hear from, but Speaker Hortman and Senator Gazelka were there to speak. I think the one thing that I thought was heartwarming somewhat, was that they both realized that the budget is the #1 issue, and they're both committed and pretty pragmatic in getting it done. They didn't say that they would do it within the time frame, and they may need a special session, but they are committed to it, and they do know it's the priority, and, you know, they have pledged to work together. So I think as we move forward, especially the legislative group and our platform and things, it's going to be important that we get into the ear of our legislators. So I think that's it for board reports. Future events.
Skip me.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Jonathan, did you have one?
Well, just really briefly.
Yeah.
Since nobody else mentioned it, I just want to welcome our 2 new members. Thank you. And Mary, congratulations on another term, and we're glad to have all of you in the room. And Stacy, thank you, congratulations, and good luck reprising your role as chair.
It's been a while. I'm a little rusty. Okay. Future events. So MSBA Leadership Conference, I think Martha's emailed these out, but it is virtual, obviously new this year, January 14th, 21st, 28th. If we all can attend, we're obviously all registered, so please do. I think, you know, I always get a good bit of information out of that, and since that is provided for us, I think it's important. I think one thing to note, the virtual awards recognition ceremony was Saturday, or will be Saturday, January 30th. And we do have a board member here that is going to be recognized as an award. Michael Nelson's will be receiving an award, and I can't exactly, for Rise, no, what is it?
For a number of hours.
Hours of training.
Committed to
and
training
committed
through
to doing that.
MSBA, yep.
Yep, so real good example there of valuable MSBA training. So if we can attend and support her, I think it would be appreciated. No school for grades E through 12, January 18th. It's Martin Luther King Day. We have a board study session, January 25th at 6. And then, as we've heard, we do have a meeting with legislators, which will be virtual, Google Meet, on February 1st, 2021 at 6. And right now, I think we have Senator Pratt and Senator Port.
Confirmed,
RCP'd.
yep.
And we have a couple more, obviously, our representatives that we're waiting on, but we're working on it. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So made.
By Jonathan, second? Is that Mary? Thank you. All right. Jonathan?
Aye.
Enrique?
Aye.
Amy? Aye. Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Mary? See, I knew it. I made it all. Michael?
Hi.
Aye. We are adjourned.